a case study that I worked closely with in 2015, and we still work with them today. But again, included it because they had similar situation as yourself. And so in working with them, we were able to refinance some of their debt that they had. They had some financial constraints, and there were a little bit of difficulty. And so what we did was we extended their debt to alleviate some of the financial pressures for them. And during that time, or rather prior to the issuance of these bonds, they had lost their rating. And so we knew all of this going into the preparation of the offering document for the investors. And so again, they had lost their rating, they had a late audit, and they had some financial constraints. And so we did some refunding for them, extended the debt to alleviate some of the financial pressures. And even prior to the issuance of those debt, we worked with them on some short-term tax anticipation notes to make some payments on their debt service, either because of the lateness with the Cook County and the way the taxes were coming in, or again, because they needed to have the money in time to make those debt service payments. But again, this one, page 6, summarizes some of the issues that this particular client was experiencing during that time. Now here, it talks about, for example, they had low tax collections. That's not your situation. We did our research, and your tax collections looks really good, so we're really, and I think that's to be proud of.
I think this reflects, there's a whole range of credit quality that an issuer has. We work with a number of AAA credits, AA credits, single A credits, and we work with a number of communities such as yourselves that don't have a rating at this juncture. So, there's a wide range of expertise that we bring to all different types of clients.
And also knowing, the market out there, and knowing where to go to target these type of bonds and, clients that are struggling a little bit. And, I'm proud to say that since 2015, since we've issued the bonds, they are doing really well, working on getting, or ensuring rather, that their financial statements or their audits are done in a timely manner. Disclosure documents are filed timely, and I can say it's in a much better shape than where they were then. And that was, again, because of, whether it be because of the economic downturn that led to some of the financial pressures during the time, all of those factors, we were able to get in at the right time and make some adjustments and, again, do some refunding, some restructuring, and, helping them get into a better position and to look to the future and getting back into the rating market, as Dave mentioned, getting a credit review at some point in the future.
I think one of the things that happens when we work with issuers, Rafleet is being modest, but we become a team of working with your staff and the board, finance committee, bond counsel, and ourselves to try to develop a model and work with you through that process over a period of time. So what happens is in the situation, the case study that Rafleet is indicating, they're able to see progress, and they're able to see strengthening of their financials because of the team effort working through that process. And so that we're 3 years into that, and it's a stronger situation than when we started with them.
I actually mentioned to John sometime last week when we had a brief conversation, not just this case study, but there's another client that we worked with that they had issued some debt, which were capital appreciation bonds, a little different from your typical general obligation bonds that the village has issued over the last several years in 98, 2002, and so forth. And so their debt had accrued over time. And so they had, for example, a $5.5 million debt payment that was coming due, I believe at the end of last year. And we were able to help them with, again, it was a tough transaction, but we were able to get all the players involved and get the deal priced in such a way where we were able to do some reduction and allow for the village to manage the payment of that service.
We did work with the village, if we're on page 7, back in 1998 actually, and you had a competitive sale at that juncture for $3.5 million. We had 7 bidders that were involved. In 2002, we worked on that issue, again, another competitive sale for $4.5 million, and we had 4 bidders that were involved. And we've occasionally or sporadically served as your disclosure agent. During that time that we worked for the village, we've served as the disclosure agent. And in the recent time, we've done that as well. That's not serving as your financial advisor, or just providing information to the EMA website through the MSRB so that as much information as available is filed in proper time. So,
if I could explain and to make it a little clearer on the filing of those documents. So when the village issued their 1998 bonds in 2002 and 2003, in your offering documents, you stated under your continuing disclosure section that you would provide certain information annually to investors who bought your bonds. And you have an obligation, or rather a duty, to ensure that that happens each year. And so these documents, it's a miniature document, so to speak, of the original offering document that would have happened at the time of your bonds. And so there are certain information that are captured in this document that are presented annually. Those information will include your taxpayers, your equalized assessed valuation. As many of you know, for many communities had eroded during the recession. I mean, from the 2008, 2009 tax was a drastic change for many people, and now we're starting to see that go back up in Cook County and in other counties. And so those are some of the information that we provide in those documents, including your outstanding debt, which gives investors a picture of where or what bonds are outstanding for the village, as well as your audited financial statements. And so, as of the last report, your 2014 audited financial statement was the last complete document that we had reported at that time.
when we look at the village, we look at both the strengths and the challenges. From a strength standpoint, certainly your home rule authority is a strength. The strong relationship you have with Fifth Third Bank that knows the village is a strong point. And you have, as Rafita mentioned earlier, a good, strong tax collections in low 90 to mid 90% range. So those are all very strong factors for the village. You also have a number of challenges, and those challenges are not insurmountable, but they are in existence at this juncture. The 2015 audit, as you know, is 3 years late, and it's being worked on as we speak. The 2016 audit will follow hopefully shortly thereafter, according to your village manager. And the 17 audit then has to follow that. All three of those audits are necessary before you can do any type of a public financing, long-term financing. That's not necessarily not true for a tax anticipation process, but it is certainly required before you can go into the market and get a chance to talk to your underwriter from Fifth Third to clarify what their base positions are in in the currency of your audit. But you're on a fast track to get those taken care of, and according to the manager, we'll have those hopefully by the end of the year.
Actually, and you know, some of you may remember at one point you could issue bonds and you could perhaps have, I mean, I remember doing it, I've been doing this for a long time, where you could put in the official statements, the unaudited, and it would be okay after 6 months or so. The bond market has changed and things are just very different now. Investors are looking for complete financial statements after a certain time period.
Well, not only the investors, but the SEC and the NSRB, have rules now as to, the currency of your audited financial statements. So underwriters, even though they may want to do something, can't do something at this juncture with the lack of the current financial information. You do have a smaller tax base and smaller population, so that your per capita information certainly is going to be high. And you do have some tax increment issues that you're more familiar with than we are, but that obviously those have to be eventually closed out and reconciled. In order to look at the financing, we look at things both on a short-term and longer-term basis. On a short-term basis, from talking to the manager, we're looking for some tax anticipation support before December 1st, so that you can prop up the cash reserves, and those are going to be essential. You do have bonds that were issued in 2003 that are currently callable, meaning that you can't refund them, and either refund is staying within the footprint or restructure, which is to reshape the debt service. And as I understand it, the effort would be to lower the debt service to around $500,000 and to give the village some levy flexibility without increasing taxes. You're also, the possibility exists to consider taxable working capital. If you're looking at a shortfall on a long-term basis, you can't issue bonds that are able to prop up your operating levies and operating expenses. And as well, you're looking at perhaps some capital for roads. As you get into the process, and as we get into the process with you, obviously a capital plan of what you would be expecting to do and hoping to do in 2018 and 19 would need to fit together with what you want to do in longer term basis as well, so that the decisions that are made in 2018 and 19 are in fact in harmony with what you need to do in the future as well. We would look at the tax intercepts, because the tax intercepts would provide additional security for the investor, and as taxes are collected, that they would go into a drop box and a reserve that would be under the control or the authority of an independent third party.
And on page 9, that's pretty much a summary of the village's current outstanding bonds at this time. And so you'll see your 1998 bonds is about to drop off at the end of this year, 2018. And then you have 2002 and your 2003. 2002 is only for 3 years or less than 3 years. And then you have your 2003, which is about 5 years. And so the very last column, which is the total outstanding debt service, gives you a picture of what the total debt service payment, debt service meaning your principal and interest payment over the life of these 3 bonds, and what that total is through to 2023, the end of the year.
The 2003 bonds are the bonds that would be reshaped, and so that would probably extend out, another half a dozen years or so in order to reduce the levies to that $500,000 level, and then be able to adjust your operating levy accordingly. So, without seeing an increase in taxes. The last page is really a kind of a summary of, you're familiar with what a municipal advisor is. We're like a financial architect. We don't buy bonds, and we don't sell bonds. We serve only you as our fiduciary responsibility as to the issuer.
No conflicts of interest. And so it's our fiduciary duty to serve you, to provide you with the best service, to ensure that you're getting a fair interest rate out there when we look at what's going on in the market. We just work for you, so there are no conflicts.
So I'm certainly open to answering any questions that you might have.
Thank you. And just one point of clarification. In their presentation, they referenced Fifth Third. And just to provide a clarification, the village does not have a formal engagement with Fifth Third Bank. We've been in conversation, the village council and I have been in conversation with a representative of Fifth Third asking what the requirements are if we were to do this process. So for clarification, to the board and the finance committee, we do not have a relationship with Fifth Third. We have not formally engaged with Fifth Third with any business. We've just been in conversations with a Fifth Third underwriter to state basically what is required in an underwriting standpoint for the village to do this process. As you know, in the past, the village has always, in some instances, kind of leaped into a pond without knowing what is required until we go through the process, and hiccup after hiccup after hiccup exists. So we, at this point, are being proactive, speaking to an underwriter from one financial institution what is required. And this has been done under supervision of the village attorney as well. So there's no formal engagement. There's no obligation to work with Fifth Third. It's just a mere conversation and understanding what is actually needed for that to occur.
Okay, the question is to me, why weren't we didn't engage with the current bank that we're with? Or underwriting, the one where we have to win.
Because based on just looking at, first speaking to the financial advisors in preliminary conversation and looking at the situation that we're in, we have to look at the caliber and type of financial institution we go into when we're looking at doing transactions such as this. The board is aware, the reason we left Old Plank and into our current financial institution is because that current financial institution directed the village manager at that time, and only when they were issued a TAW was to move all our accounts to there. We don't want the village to be held hostage by a financial institution in which they tell us we have to do something in order to get a loan at a high interest rate. So I think it's smart to look at large financial institutions such as Fifth Third and others that we will have the conversations with as well to see what the offering is out there, and that's why we have financial advisors to do this.
Okay.
We really picked Fifth Third because they were the ones that bought your bonds in 2003. So they're the last underwriter that the village worked with at that time. So that, again, isn't trying to dictate anything as much as to indicate that you wanted to talk to somebody that was familiar with the bill.
Understood.
Okay.
Any questions starting with the board?
The board has any questions, sir? Okay. Trustee Wilson and then Trustee Milford.
Thank you for that. It was a great presentation.
Thank you.
I have a list of questions, but in the essence of time, I'll just ask one. And the one question is, will you give us a documented plan? It sounds like you'll be here to help us along the way, but we don't know what to do. I know one of you said that we'll,
You know, this is not what you do, right? Your last bond issue was in 2003, what, 15 years ago? And so we are used to working with clients who we guide you along. This is exactly what we do. And so in the financing process, what we would first do is prepare what's called a distribution list. A distribution list would identify who the players are in the financing process.
Speaking to Mike as much as possible, thank you.
What we would first do is prepare what's called a distribution list. The distribution list would identify all the players or the individuals involved in the financing process. Who are those individuals? That would be your municipal advisor, whomever you choose to walk you through the process. That list would include your bond counsel. It would include your registrar and paying agent. It would include your underwriter. So all the players who are involved in the financing process, your local attorney, all the players, including your contact, so everyone would have access to that information. And then we would prepare a timetable. So the timetable will show you, because you have different duties. You don't have time to do this. This is why we're here, to then say, oh, we need to have these documents done by June 1st. Then after the document, we will send you this on June 15th. And so the timetable will list the entire process from the preparation of the document to the documents being drawn up by bond counsel to us coming out to a meeting to do the presentation at the bond sale to tell you what a great sale you had, what your interest rates were, all the way through closing. And
if I can interject, because I think the question is precursor to actual financing. A lot of times, you know, the way that you want to get started is really have a Finance 101 workshop kind of thing, and work with staff to be able to have a sense of what are your goals, you know, what do you want to accomplish, and because you know the opportunity that we have is then to help you understand, well, how do you get there? You know, what are the steps that you need to take in order to get there? What's the cost that's associated with those steps? Because you don't want to have a plan for 2018 that doesn't work in 2020 or 2022. So you do want to have a sense of, this is what we want to accomplish. This is our goal. You know, this is the direction that we're heading. And then Raflita talks about the implementation pieces that now that we know where we're going, you know, this is who we want to work with, you know, this is how we want to go about the sale. Again, you're probably going to have a negotiated sale because you don't have you know, a strong you know, credit situation at the current time. So, but again, as in the Maywood model, you know, you move over a period of time from where you are to where you want to be.
Right.
And that's our journey with you. It is to help assist and guide. Again, it's going to be your model, but you know, it's going to be hopefully our working with you hand in hand, so that the you know, when the financings occur, they're accomplishing what you want to accomplish, when you want to accomplish it, and we move from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 over a period of time.
And just for clarification, so the board is aware, when we interacted with the 2 municipal advisors, we provided a general overview of the village's financial information.
Yeah.
And based on that general interview, we had to do separate presentations in regards to that. We have a lot of issues, as you all know, in regards to our audits being up to date. So I believe their presentation was more prompted on, since they had previous relationship with the village and knowing things in regards to information in the past, that they were able to set up a structured kind of roadmap. As Trustee Wilson says, I believe a roadmap has to be done, and I think that's very important, but I just want to provide that clarification.
Thank you. Trustee Milton Bailey?
Yes, I'd like to kind of piggyback on Trustee Wilson's concerns, and that is it's one thing to have a plan to get us through this year. The other part of the plan is a much longer term plan for us. And I was wondering if you could speak to that as part of your process and assisting the village in getting financially stable for the long term. Do you put together a 5-10-year plan for the village?
Again, ultimately, it's your plan. You know, it's not our plan and we go away or whatever. You know, we work with you to develop a plan that you're wanting to accomplish. In that, you know, we'll be talking with you about not only, you know, audit level promptness, but the cash balances, your capital plan, your fund balance policies, so that you can establish some reserves in order to get into the credit market as a rated bond issue. So those are stages downstream from phase one, which is really a tax anticipation requirement prior to December. Get the audits done, and then in hopefully early 18, to look at either, or perhaps both, of a restructuring of the 2003s, looking again taxable working capital, and perhaps the road project as well. So those are just throwing things against the wall right now because we haven't had the opportunity to work with you to really establish, you know, what your longer range capital plans are. But from a cash flow standpoint, it's obviously essential that we get that cash flow borrowing done right away.
And so just to add to what Dave said here, so even if you look at your page 9, we're not just looking at what happens through to 2020, through to 2023. You know, included in this planning process, we would do some debt modeling. It sounds like that's kind of where you're headed. We will do some debt modeling. We will look at your targets for what the village is comfortable with paying and what's doable. How can we get to those goals? We'll look not just at refunding these 2003s, but as Dave mentioned, there may be some road project. We want to look at the big picture. And then we want to say, okay, well, the village can only afford maybe $600,000 or $500,000 in 18, 6 in 19, 7 in 20, and then, you know, based on your models and financial planning, we can, you know, maybe stable off or have a level debt service somewhere about 9 or whatever the village feels is comfortable. And so those are the numbers that we will work with through to what, maybe a 20-year period, whatever life of the new bonds and the restructuring, not 20 years for the restructuring, but for the new bonds, which we will combine. So we will put all of those together to give you, I mean, this is a lot of going back and forth. This is us working through these numbers, sending the numbers to you guys to look at, does this work? And making sure that you also understand the process and understand what you're looking at and what are expected for your levy each year.
I guess the one thing that keeps throwing me off is that when you say our plan, and if we had a plan, you wouldn't be here. Right? So when you say our plan and what we want to do, we don't know. That's why.
Yeah, and that's why we're here.
The plan you'll help us
Absolutely.
create.
Right.
Plan you'll help us create.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
But
I'm just saying that it is a joint process, that there's some unanimity, you know, in the village, and you know, we go through, again, some of these planning workshops to let you see you could do this or you could do that. So this is the fun part, because it's a part of putting together the model.
Okay.
That you're happy with.
Trustee Payton,
Because we
and then
have,
finance.
and again, I'm kind of piggybacking on Trustee Wilson on the plan, is that we're going to have some TIFs that are going to be expiring also. Like we've got some TIF companies that have already expired that will contribute now to our tax base in about 5 or 6 years, pretty substantial So that's why, you know, I think, and our community is the highest tax community in Will County. And one of the things that we need to do is get our tax rate down, you know, for our citizens and to make it more attractive for businesses to invest here. And I think 5 or 6 years from now, the expiration of Tier 5 is going to help us substantially. But we need to help the companies then also. So that's why we need to, you know, I've been a big proponent of putting together a 5 or 10-year plan, something that we have that's, you know, the roadmap to make sure that we're moving ahead and provide, and then be able to provide the kind of services that our community deserves. So, you know, that's, it sounds like you're you know, you provide those kinds of services, but just so you know, in my opinion, you know, we need something that's just very kind.
Well, and we have the tools to put it on paper so you can see exactly what it looks like.
Okay, planning commission, do you have any?
Well,
Oh, you have one more, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. First of all, I was really impressed with your clients in the area. You know, I was pretty impressed with that. Is your focus only in Illinois, or do you do other states as well?
Good question. Our Chicago office is Illinois. We have an Iowa office that does issues in Iowa, but we don't stray outside the borders.
Probably because I know you're about 10 times the size of our last presenter was.
The other firm has offices in other locations, and they get a lot of their work done up in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
But we're here in Chicago.
Everyone thinks we're overworked.
I'm not saying probably are.
I mean, we're all over Illinois. I mean, this is, as you mentioned, a handful of our clients, but I mean, whether it be Woodbridge, Schaumburg, Elgin, we're all over.
He has another question.
I got two more questions.
It's,
Could you comment a little bit on your staffing that you would have in order to work with us, other individuals besides yourself?
You're looking at the front door.
Oh, okay.
That Rafalita and I would be the representatives to the village, but we have, I think, 14 other people here in the Chicago office
Yes.
that are there. Actually, that's we had a situation one time when we interviewed and people looked at the number of clients that we had and said, we're not going to hire you, we're going to hire the one that doesn't have any clients. And the reason they don't have any clients is so we are very busy, but we're very good at what we do and we're very efficient at what we do. So, you know, it's a matter of allocating that workload internally, and I work with a small community along the Mississippi River, and one of the evaluations that we received is she feels it's like the most important client, you know, that we have. And her bond issue is like $40,000 a year. So, I mean, we have that high level of service regardless of the issue size.
Can you also talk a little bit about what your costs are, what